I am here to offer you ideas for consideration. I have every hope that you will weigh the merit of these ideas with objectivity. I welcome critical scrutiny of the ideas I hold to be true. I believe they can withstand critical examination. But I have been wrong before, and I could still be wrong about some of them. If they're absurd, contradict reality, or unreasonable, at odds with common sense, I'll just simply ask you to reject them. I have some knowledge of science, the scientific method, and evolution. At the same time, I recognize that I'm unqualified to make some judgments. My confidence in evolution springs in large part from my confidence in the scientific method and the scientific community. I hold this confidence because the scientific community is comprised of numerous highly educated individuals. I respect education, especially in such large numbers. Contrary to the misinformation disseminated by creationists, the scientific community has overwhelmingly and universally accepted evolution as fact. The scientific community has tapped into a mountain of information and evidence upon which to base its conclusions. I have only tapped into a very tiny amount of information, and probably that is the case with you. The scientific method used by the scientific community is ideally constructed and employed to root out and expose fraudulent ideas. Testing, scrutiny, and falsification are its mandate. I have no reason to conclude that the scientific community is involved in a planetary conspiracy to deceive the world with regards to the origins of life. I'd like to talk for a moment about faith. My dictionary says that faith is confident belief in the truth, value, or trustworthiness of a person, idea, or a thing. This definition is consistent with usage in both religion and science. Some of us have confidence or faith in ideas without substantiation. That is, we lack knowledge or evidence that might threaten the idea. We have blind faith. The uneducated nurture this kind of faith. Some of us have confidence or faith in ideas with substantiation. That is, we're readily willing to consider, seriously consider, any relevant knowledge or evidence that might falsify our belief. We want our belief to be in harmony with all evidence. The scientific community and the critical thinking community employ this kind of faith. But there are some of us who have confidence or faith in ideas with hostility. Hostility to any evidence which might threaten the credibility of it. That is, we allow bias and agendas to control our thought processes and actions to the extent that we become prisoners of our ideas. We will readily employ apologetic flim-flam to prop up our false ideas and avoid accountability to those who question us. Clerics, mystics, demagogues, flim-flammers, and con artists, I have found nurture this kind of faith in both themselves and in others. In my search for an understanding of the mysteries of life, I am committed to faith with substantiation. That is, I am committed to seriously consider any relevant knowledge or evidence that might falsify any belief that I have. I am equally committed to recognizing my own biases and agendas, because we all have them. As a result, I have abandoned hostility to knowledge or evidence that threatens my agendas or biases. I refuse to become a prisoner of an idea. I frequently discuss the scientific method with students on this campus, and I'm disappointed with their understanding. Many are under the impression that the scientific method is designed and employed to prove a hypothesis to be true. If you share that understanding, I'll ask you to reconsider. The scientific method is designed and employed to challenge the hypothesis. It is not designed and employed to prop it up. That is, if there exists any flaw, the scientific method can only be described as a never-ending witch hunt to find it. If you doubt that, I'll ask you to do some research. You have an access to the library, the internet, and your science department. Use these resources in an independent, objective investigation. I believe the scientific community can best be summed up in the scientific method can best be summed up in one sentence. It is a sentence well worth memorizing, and the principle it embodies is worth applying to every understanding we have. A single, well-substantiated fact, irreconcilable with a belief, is sufficient to prove that belief false. And if you want a copy of that sentence, I have plenty of copies. You can see me after the debate. Creationists come to us claiming to have one or more well-substantiated facts irreconcilable with the scientific theory of evolution. Well, I'm going to stipulate to you that if a creationist brings to the attention of the scientific community a single well-substantiated fact irreconcilable with the scientific theory of evolution, then I hold that the scientific theory of evolution will have been proven false. And so will any and every credible scientist on the face of this planet. However, I am, for a couple of reasons, skeptical that any creationist has ever done so. I note that the creationists are always pitching their argument to the uninformed. I am uninformed, and so are you. If there were a scientist here today agreeing with the creationist argument, even that wouldn't be sufficient to convince me. I require the scrutiny of the whole scientific community, not just one or two supporters of creationism who make a whole lot of noise. If creationists have a valid argument, they need to take it to the scientific community. If the scientific community is impressed, I'll be impressed. Why are creationists appealing to our ignorance? Do they think that the scientific community will capitulate if 50 million misinformed Americans claim creationism makes sense? Creationists know that the scientific community is not going to buy into apologetic flim-flam, but the masses will. And the masses are really what count. As long as the masses think that evolution is bunk, monotheism will flourish. I find it interesting that creationists are eager to embrace the idea that a single well-substantiated fact irreconcilable with the scientific theory of evolution is sufficient to prove evolution false. The premise of their argument is based solely on that principle. Yet these same people are hostile to the idea that even a multitude of well-substantiated facts irreconcilable with creationism are in any way sufficient to prove creationism false. Well, why is it they insist upon a double standard? Willing to hold evolution accountable to the scientific method, but not willing to hold creationism accountable. Is not creationism an explanation of an empirical event? Shouldn't creationist assertions be testable by scientific observations in geology, astronomy, anthropology, and biology, etc., just as evolution is? Well, of course. You know, I don't really think I need to defend evolution here today. The basic theory that all life evolved has survived the assault of critics since the early 1840s. As for the details of evolution, the scientific community always has and still is eager to find flaws based on sound scientific principles. As flaws are found, the theory will be modified as necessary to conform to the evidence, and our understanding of the mysteries of life are enhanced. That is the beauty of the scientific method, the ability to abide all evidence, always. If 100% of the misinformed masses are persuaded by creationists of this world, I will not be impressed. I will not be impressed because I understand the processes at work in religious evangelism. On the other hand, if the scientific community can be persuaded by creationists, then I will be impressed.